Can you describe a little bit of the modern just adult learning concepts or things that are maybe different from what people remember from their previous education?
Yeah, and I think it depends on where you're getting your education. Are you talking about something formal like school or college? Or are you talking about the on the job training that you got because your manager told you to do a task that you didn't really know how to do, but you figured it out anyway? Because there's all different ways that we learn. So if we think about a formal learning environment, a lot of us were conditioned to sit still, listen to a teacher, absorb the information, take notes, and then pass a test. That's how we were conditioned to learn because that was thought to be the best way of teaching. Now, we know now, and what neuroscience tells us is the best way to teach is actually to get the learners to experience the concepts and techniques or attitudes that you're trying to teach in multiple different contexts. So you're not just going to lecture at them, you're going to give them a scenario to explore. You're not just going to give them a test, you're going to give them a project to do, all around the same concepts. So what you might be seeing if you've got, kids in school or young kids is they're going to be focusing on, a lesson plan and a set of learning objectives, but they're going to be exploring it in lots of different ways. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about Sandler, because we've had this great history of having tons of ways to explore our content. And I think we're even putting our foot on the gas there too, in terms of some of the newer avatar-based content that we're going to be coming out with later this year.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and I want to save some of that for our technique discussion here in a minute. So we won't quite unwrap that present yet. But in the new sales development series, we try to do that, exactly what you're saying, as much as possible. That there's manager discussions you can have in your sales team meetings. There's role plays and sales simulators that you can do to practice the information. And there are online videos and lectures and discussions of how you can kind of discover that content for the first time. But I think you really highlighted, it goes all the way back to our founder, David Sandler, wrote the book, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. And I think to wrap up our attitude part here is it really depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to get somebody to memorize the capitals of all 50 states, you can do that in a variety of different ways. It's really repetition. But if you're trying to get somebody to learn how to read a prospect and ask the right question at the right time, or how to deliver a pitch with the right tonality and the right nonverbal communication, that's a totally different skill, and skills are different than knowledge, right? So
completely, yes.
Behavior here. How do we do the right thing at the right time and understand what are we trying to communicate and learn versus like how we do that through the different methodologies?
Yeah, exactly. And so when you think about a skill, first you have to tell them what it is, right? So you tell them what the skill is, you give them an example. So we do a lot of demonstration, and we always try and personalize that to make it as real as possible for whatever environment the learners are in. Short sales cycle, long sales cycle, depending on your vertical, we will personalize that modeling so you can see that skill set in the context of your real sales motion. And then we give you chances to practice that. So then you're immediately going in and applying what you saw, get a chance to get comfortable with it, fail in a safe place before you're in front of a live client. And then we give you even more structure to take it away from our sessions and go try it out with a peer, with your manager. We also, some of our best clients go through our ambassador program and therefore have a certified Sandler expert in their business who can set up like coaching and excellence groups around these sales techniques, which I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's so cool. And again, it goes back almost 50 years for Sandler here, because so many gurus and sales experts, they write a book and then they come up with a lecture and they'll fly into town and they'll do a nice 2-day boot camp or a sales kickoff. And I think a lot of organizations have fallen into that trap of like, we're just going to do 2 weeks of onboarding for our new employees, and then they're magically fixed. They're going to sell for the rest of their career, the next 20 years from that 2 weeks that they learned. And I think all of us realize that that's probably not true. If we really want people performing at the highest levels, that's what this show is built on. We need to work on their attitude, that some days they're going to have bad streaks and some days they're going to have hot streaks. And some days they're not going to know what to do, or some days they're going to be scared to make that phone call because it's a difficult conversation and we're raising prices or the supply chain got messed up. And those are all different things that we need to work on an ongoing basis, rather than just that one time we did it, we learned the concept, we know what the right answer is, and moving on, because we can't really ever move on or stop learning, right?
Yeah, and when it comes to that real behavior change, that's what you're talking about. It's that continually moving that boulder up the hill, right? Trying to get yourself in better shape. When you go to a training event like that, you go to an SKO, you can leave feeling energized, and like I don't want to discredit the value of that shift in mindset because that is really powerful in terms of getting you over to the hump to the next step, so that you go back to it and try it again and try it again. So I think there is value in that, but you're not going to be, downhill mountain biking after a seminar. That's for sure.
So let's talk about the right information at the right time too, because in reimagining our sales development series, we've had to make some really hard choices that we have years of information. I mean, we have 400 trainers, 50 years of experience. We've trained over 1 million people. There is a lot of information we could dispense. But you've had the tough job with your team of distilling all of that information from our subject matter experts and our history and our materials and saying, how much can we really put into one class at one time so we don't get this cognitive overload or we don't burn out the students and we don't save what they really need to learn in order to be successful for 3 years later. We want the
Right.
biggest impact possible. So can you just talk a little bit about that decision-making process and maybe even tie it into sales about what people really need to know first to get the fastest results and how much they can consume?
Yeah. So, I mean, so you got to think about cognitive overload because that's a real thing, right? So you go to a lecture, you land on one or two things, and like you're like, yeah, man, that's it. But I forget the other eight things that the lecturer said. So working memory is a real issue. Some people take notes, they refer back to them, but that's not how most of us go through our lives on a day-to-day basis. We're absorbing information as we go along. We listen to a podcast, we watch a TV show, we watch a news clip, we watch a TikTok video, and then maybe we'll go to some more formalized long form learning like a virtual instructor led session. And so, what we really want to make sure we're doing there is capturing attention, generating that excitement, because actually, when you have that engagement, that humor, that excitement level, it triggers the pathways in your brain to remember stuff better. That's why play is so important. And I know that you are passionate about play. And so our sessions are fun, they are high energy. So not only are we looking at the content in there, because that is really hard, we have to make sure that it's relevant, it's actionable, it tells a story for you to address a specific problem. But that in that session, we're maintaining the energy flow in that session so that you're not exhausted because it's high energy all the time, but it gives you that time for deep reflection, but then brings that energy back up. So not only are we working on the concepts and techniques, but we're also thinking about energy management as you go through that session.